quote, "We are only semi-negotiating with them." Now, I don't know what that means. Semi-negotiating. Maybe this explains the differing outlooks of the Iranians and the Americans over the past weeks over negotiations. When the United States has said we're in negotiations with them, and the Iranians say they're not in negotiations with us. We are only semi-negotiating with them. Continuing his quote, "We are just watching Iran with its huge inflation and the fact that they have no money." Excuse me. He stressed that Iran, quote, "is in very bad shape economically and has no money to pay its troops. The U.S. naval blockade," the president had told Axios, "has exacerbated the Iranian regime's economic crisis." At the same time, and I'm going to update this after I tell you what he said in this interview just yesterday that with oil down to slightly over $75 a barrel, U.S. consumers are feeling less pain from the war. Today, it's above 80. Just saying. But, of course, it fluctuates. But his point to this, in his quote, "It will work out. It always works out. It's like a chess game." That's what he said about the back and forth with Iran. So, an agreement governing traffic in the Strait of Hormuz was negotiated. Iran, Oman, and somehow the United States was involved in those negotiations. Maybe from the U.S. view, it was semi-negotiations based on what the president is now saying. But as part of that new deal, Iran would be given partial control over traffic in the Strait. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do I need to point out that that is something that it did not have before the war? So, this is why I ask, has Iran outplayed Trump? Maybe not, but it's worth questioning. Qatari and Pakistani mediators have expressed confidence that the deal would be announced last week, but since then its prospects have seemed to fade. U.S. officials are now also saying that there are growing disagreements inside the Iranian regime. Well, the United States has been saying this all along. One camp led by the president of Iran, according to U.S. officials, is extremely worried about an economic collapse and believes Iran needs to reach a deal with the United States. But the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard is rejecting any concessions. And frankly, I'm interested in hearing from Alan in just a moment. Who really holds the power there? The president or the Revolutionary Guard? I have my suspicions, but I'd love to hear what Alan has to say about that. On Saturday, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council laid out new terms for reopening the strait. This is on top of what was negotiated with Oman as the mediator. In that statement, he said that in order for the strait to reopen, listen to these conditions, folks. The United States must never threaten nor insult Iran in any language. Permanently end the war against Iran and Iran's allies in Lebanon, Gaza, Yemen, and Iraq. And lift the naval blockade and withdraw military forces from the surroundings of Iran. Recognizing that we don't know for sure who's speaking on behalf of Iran, whether it's this guy, the head of the council, the Revolutionary Guard, or the president of Iran, and recognizing that we are getting mixed messages from Iran, one might come to a conclusion that the president was outplayed by Iran. Or one might come to the conclusion that the president, recognizing that the American people want out of this conflict, has found a way to withdraw. Now, something that's not mentioned in this Axios article, in addition to not mentioning any threats of additional military action, which obviously have fallen on deaf ears in Tehran, I don't see anything here. I don't hear anything from the administration at all about their nuclear capabilities. I don't think it was that long ago that the president said that's a non-negotiable, that even what he called the nuclear dust from the attacks last year must be accounted for, much less accounting for any other nuclear aspirations and developments that may be going on in Iran right now, surreptitiously and probably subterraneanly. No mention of that at all. Now, the president today in a Truth Social announced that he was and I don't know how he's going to collect, by the way. He's demanding reparations from Iran to all persons and their families who were killed or gravely injured by Iran. So this is his new manner of going after them economically as opposed to militarily. I don't know. Obviously, by asking the question, I do question whether the president has been outplayed by Iran. Happy to hear people suggest that that's not the case. I'd feel a lot better if somebody could suggest that's not the case. So with that, I'll start calling people in the order in which I see them on the stage. And today that order begins with Alan, followed by Scott.
Hello, Mr. Gary. God bless you for all the hard work you do. And hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well wherever you are and you had a peaceful weekend. I think in the surface, still it shows President Trump being played by Iran. But it's not just Iran. Iran is still, every day past, I get this stronger and stronger feeling. Iran had a whole bunch of proxies, which, thanks to Israel, took care of most of them. But Iran is the proxy for China and Russia. I don't know, Gary, you heard about a couple of days prior to weekend, the whole right of Caspian Sea given to Russia for good, for all those stuff he did and Iran is doing, financially draining United States, and they know this government has to answer to the people one way or another, and the Iranian regime doesn't have to answer to any of these. As a citizen, the only way they can do is execution and the straight shoot in the heart or eyes or head. But it's extremely heartbreaking. They want to pay for all those loss of individual human beings. I thought I grew up under this notion. No amount of money can buy human lives. But it looks like they put in a price on it, and they want to slip a few dollars to the mothers and the fathers, which is heartbreaking. I told you before, last week, I see my cousin after 60 years. The stories she told me, it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I thought I am just living in some place I haven't I have no idea what's going on. The amount of people got hurt, and this thing, they're using the same tactic in Iran. Iran regime says if this regime goes, the chaos is going to happen. Al Qaeda is going to come and eat you guys alive. Hezbollah come in and eat you alive. And in the meantime, they're doing all the killing, they're doing all the eating. And then outside, especially the Gulf countries, they said if this regime goes, chaos is going to hit the Middle East. So they're using a scare tactic. Maybe Trump has something under his sleeve. Nobody knows. And maybe Iran, I'm sure Iran has. Iran is not, you mentioned who they ordering. There is still unknown. Since Israel took care of most of the leaders, they went under the ground, and the mice is too many of them. First we had, Ali Khamenei, they call him mice because he lived in the holes for almost 2, 3, 4 years. Now the decision maker, they are hiding somewhere. Nobody knows what it is. And the people up front, you see them. I don't want to tell you. One day they say something, the next day one comes and they say, no, he was wrong. If they say a wrong word, then they house arrest them or jail them, or if it's too dangerous, they're going to take care of it. It started good, but it's going to the wrong way. I still, a lot of people, they believe in Trump has the winning card in his hand. They doing this, they doing that. But in the meantime, tremendous amount of life is going. They execute in 2023 years young people. If the doctor treat any of these injured and they go kill them in the hospital, and I don't know where the hell is the human rights, where the hell the UN is, but hey, they got Russia and they got China behind them, and North Korea doing all this stuff with them, and sanction is not going to help. They had many ways through many years. They had sanction, but they have a way to transfer money through Dubai and.
So given all of this, Alan, everything that you say, has he been outplayed?
He's outplayed so far, yeah.
And what about who's in charge? Because it seems like the United States isn't even certain who they're negotiating.
They have nobody, as I said, there's nobody we know is on charge, but there are groups. I think there is still the head of, the Revolutionary Guard. Revolutionary Guard has been taking over Iran for many years. And I'm sure, despite of the top front head, which, few of them, they died already, but there are some under the ground, and they are the one they call all the shots. There's nobody left. I mean, president don't have no power. Iran president never had any power. Supreme leader
the Revolutionary Guard is who's really in charge.
Exactly.
And the Revolutionary Guard is saying that they don't care at all about the economic pressures. The president there says he cares about the economic pressures, but you just said that the president he's basically a figurehead.
He can care as much as he wants to be, but his element, he doesn't have any. None of the president had any power through this whole 47 years. You know that the supreme leader, which Khamenei was the head of him. Now I'm sure there is another one. They had many of them. They knew sooner or later he wasn't. He wasn't a young buck. He was very old. He was like a 90 something, and he was sick for many years. So I'm sure they found somebody as a replace. But definitely all of them under the control of Revolutionary Guard, because they have the control of everything.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to give you my interpretation and tell me if I'm wrong. And that is that you have little regard for this or optimism about this new economic pressure as opposed to the military pressure on Iran having any positive effect, any positive effect at all.
Yeah, because the past economy, Iran economy been down the drain for what? For at least 30, 40 years. They thought this is the understanding of economy of Iranian. They did that. They thought if they add zero to each number, and it's big. When it was 1,000, and then become million, and then become trillion. But they didn't know adding zeros is not going to affect anything. Iran doesn't have economy. The money doesn't worth anything. It's they don't care. People go to
In
the
other words,
question.
how much worse could it get?
Well,
you already hit rock bottom, is what you're saying. They already
exactly.
hit rock
But I don't know how much it got worse. The worst time it was like 20, 30, 15 years ago. Now I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. It's all I hear, it's a bad stuff from everybody. Everybody. They are sitting and they saying, this regime needs to go. And these outsiders sitting and they trying to negotiate. Negotiate with what? What are you going to get out of these idiots? They're not going to give anything. Back to you, sir.
So one of the things you said early on is that it has to do with the regime not having to answer like our government has to answer to the people. The regime there doesn't have to answer to the people. So I would think that in a government where there is pressure from below up, from the people up to the government, economic squeeze affects, as we see here, the economic squeeze is affecting this midterm election. But in Iran, the economic squeeze may not affect who's in charge at all. And I don't know if that's a fair assessment, Alan, but that's basically what I am able to see,
No,
from
you're absolutely right. The economy, it doesn't, because they don't live in the same life they do. They have connection outside. They bring stuff to them. They don't have to go to grocery and buy, and they don't have to do anything. The economy pressure is not going to do anything. There are plenty money. It's out of Iran. I don't think so. It affects them at all.
Thank you, Alan. We'll go to Scott, followed by Marshall.
All right, always struggling for the mic button, Gary. Always struggling for the mic button. Well said by Alan. I think Trump has been outplayed here. I think that they're negotiating from a position of strength. I think they're currently winning. I mean, in some sense, right? Like I would say, or at least I don't know if they're winning. I think we're losing. I don't know if that's possible for us to be losing without them winning. But you look at the first loss that we have here is apparently if you take the reporting seriously, which I have no reason not to. Any deal, it seems like it's going to involve some sort of service fees for the ships passing through the Straits of Hormuz, which we didn't have before, right? That's something that wasn't in play before, and now seemingly could be in play. They still have ballistic missiles. They're still producing deadly drones. They're still attacking shipping, and they're encouraging their proxies to attack. And look, the Houthis, I think, went so far as to attack. The Houthis went so far as to attack a ship in Egypt. I mean, I think that also the third thing, way in which I think we've lost here, is that we've gotten rid of the people at the top of the regime, but the infrastructure has seemed to some degree to have prevailed and lasted, right? It's not, the infrastructure has not been brought to its knees. It's still functioning at some level. We might have a more militaristic government there now, actually, with the top of the regime out of out of commission. You might have a more militaristic regime with some weakened but useful clerics in the lurch. And lastly, I think our allies have watched with total confusion. And I mean, look, the confidence of our allies is eroded even more. I mean, this is not Trump's thing, and this is part of, I think if you're a Trump supporter, this is maybe what you like, right? I mean, that he said it's, international and multilateral relations be damned, that America first. And that means at the expense of, these sorts of strategic alliances. Maybe some people might think that's a good thing, but I think, from my perspective, it's a loss. So all these things, I think strategically put us in a bad place, and I think they're negotiating. And also, they just make him look foolish, right? I mean, I think they probably tell him, yeah, all right, we'll do this, and he comes in, we got a deal, we got a very strongly powerful deal, and then they just pull it back. It's like Lucy with Charlie Brown in football. I mean, that's it's a big Lucy Charlie Brown game. So I don't know, guy. I think Trump is getting played, and I think unless we're willing to commit a lot of resources to turn this around, resources that I don't think Trump has the stomach for, and nor do the American people, I think we're going to continue to get played here. But thanks.
What I find interesting is I got 2 phone calls over the weekend, yesterday, from 2 of my friends who are MAGA folks. And they're very upset by what the president said in this article that I outlined today, yesterday's article in Axios. And, one of them said, well, we promised the Iranian people and then we let them down, which I think is probably true. I'm not arguing that we should have gotten into this in the first place. But I am saying that it's interesting to me that even MAGA folks, they've lost faith in this president. One of them said, this is his observation, not mine, that he seems to have lost his enthusiasm for anything. That he says he doesn't scream at reporters any longer. He says that's a bad thing. To me, of course, it's a good thing. I never liked when he did that. Thought it was unbecoming of a president. But he says that's a bad thing because he's lost his spark. And he seems to not really care that much any longer. And that these decisions make him feel like the president doesn't even care for the things that he voted for, a strong president. Although many MAGA folks, of course, have diverged from the president for the exact opposite reason, I recognize, because they said he promised no more wars, no more foreign wars. And so I don't think he represents the entire MAGA base, but he is a MAGA Republican. The other one went so far as to say that he's considering voting Democratic for the first time in his life.
He and Nick Fuentes, Gary. He and Nick Fuentes.
Well, I wouldn't put either of these 2 gentlemen in the same box as Nick Fuentes. Their opinions are completely. They find Nick Fuentes very alienating to their point of view, but I actually didn't have the opportunity to delve into that statement. To be able to give you some insight as to why he says, and it may just be a frustration that he is expressing right now because he was in support of the president's actions to try to free Iran. And he's disappointed in the president, and he said, so he says, I might just vote Democratic. Maybe when he goes into the voting booth, he won't because he's so strong Republican. I don't think any time in his life, from what he's told me, he's ever voted Democratic. But I found that interesting.
Even the expression of the sentiment is interesting.
You're right. The expression of the sentiment is interesting.
That means something, right? That he's willing to say that to you. There's meaning to that, right?
Right. He was expressing his exacerbation with the situation. So who knows? I think a lot of people, when they get to that point, they just don't vote. When they don't know who to vote for, or they, maybe they just don't vote. I don't know. It'll be interesting in Michigan to see how people or how many people for the first time don't vote because they have problems with both of those candidates for completely different reasons.
Well, people vote
What do you
emotionally,
think?
right, Gary? And I think a lot of this DSA voted on the left is emotional, right? I don't think most of these people looked into the policies or understand socialism. It's just they want change. They're frustrated with Trump, and the Democrats don't look like change, right? The milquetoasty establishment. I mean, when you look up the opposite of change on Wikipedia, you see a big picture of Chuck Schumer. Okay.
Oh man, I was just going to say the same thing.
Great minds think alike, or a crazy one.
Right, and this is why AOC may very well challenge him successfully.
If
We'll see.
AOC gets the nomination, my prediction is the Democrats will lose 57 states, Guam, Mars, the whole shebang.
Well, then if I'm a Republican, I'm going to be the first to campaign for AOC. Right?
No, absolutely. No, look, I'm not. Look, I would not surprise me if Republicans help push El Sayed over the top, right? If I'm a Republican in a state with open primaries, man, and I got nothing to do. I got nothing interesting to vote for on my side of the aisle. Why not jump in and cause some mischief?
Well, I think Republicans probably did, and I don't know. I haven't seen any analysis of this vote because it was an open primary for El Sayed because they feel that he's easier to beat than Stevens would have been in a general election against Rogers there in Michigan. And that Michigan one, I know that's getting into the weeds for a lot of people who don't
You
care
have to
about
compare
Michigan.
individual voters and their votes in the primary. You can track primary votes, you can't track general votes.
Right. Well, I'm talking about the primary vote here. So I don't know how many, what analysis have been made about that. Probably there has been, and I just haven't seen it. And the reason we focus so much on this Michigan race, folks, is because that winning of that race may determine who controls the United States Senate in 2027. Thank you, Scott. We'll go to Marshall, followed by Tiger.
Yeah, I think your audience have us over a barrel. Man, our Navy look bad. I don't know. Unless we commit to it, there's not much we can do, and we're not going to commit to it, so there's not much we can do. I don't find what we're doing to be very profitable. We're not in it to win it. And if you're not going to use
Marshall wants maximum war and devastation!
So.
Well, the stated goals, which have changed, which happens often with the United States, maybe it happens with other military campaigns of other countries, but the stated goal here, I don't think regime change was ever actually stated, it was implied. So let's set that one aside. That's difficult to obtain. But there were two other stated goals, and one was, and this was as a result of the war, because the Strait of Hormuz was open until the war began, and then they countered the U.S. attack by, closing the Strait of Hormuz. So the more recent stated goals were the nuclear capabilities, and they would not have control of the Strait of Hormuz. And it seems that the latest negotiations are pointing us toward giving them a degree of control of the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians, and because we need to get it open, And no movement on, in terms of anything that's being publicly discussed now, the nuclear issue. So, who wins at the end of all of this? I mean, nobody wins in a war. I recognize that. And to suggest that Iran has not suffered immensely as a result of this war would be naive. But I'm just saying, in terms of the goals, if those are the two current goals, and then we allow for those goals to not be reached, does that at least not suggest, Marshall, that we've been played by them?
It suggests they may not be beating us, but we're certainly losing. Their advantages are they're the power in the region. They can react asymmetrically. and we have to sustain a forward presence, they can just push their resources out. Trying to maintain a forward deployed presence takes a lot of logistical time and a lot of logistical presence. And I don't think we have gotten a ton out of it. I tend to agree with Jim Mattis. We should have more allies than we should enemies. They should be with us in the fight. But we've also traded strategic gold for tactical victories. We have, prior to the Hormuz Strait being closed, everybody assumed if you closed it, the U.S. Navy would open it. Well, now it's shown that the U.S. Navy hasn't opened it, or that it's opened it for a while and it's been closed again. Either one of those things presents us with this problem that the U.S. Navy is not as vaunted as it used to be because of that use. So I don't know if you can say they're winning, but I can certainly say that we're not getting much out of the deal.
You're
As bad as the Iranians are, and as much as I would like people from Iran to be free, without major combat operations, which we don't have support for or the money for, I don't see how you do anything worthwhile.
You're making a distinction between tactical and strategic. Reminds me of Vietnam. There were a lot of tactical victories in Vietnam, but strategically, we know how that war ended.
You know, what's his face walked around Westmoreland? He was a sergeant.
Cinegrad.
Yeah, walked around with cards in his wallet from being a sergeant. And there's this thing with McNamara, this video that I watched, a documentary with McNamara, and it referenced him specifically. And the fact that he never thought like a general, he thought like a sergeant. And that was a problem for the United States Army at the time.
Well, I think the problem with the United States Army came just as the problem with this particular conflict. It comes right from the top.
From the top, and we don't have any organic support, right?
Right, but the decisions that were made
without the support of the U.S. population, we're going nowhere.
Right, but the decisions were ultimately made by the commander-in-chief in both cases. So the armed forces can handle any tactical directive that they're given, I think, but the strategic outcomes of that have to be, you can't predetermine them, but you can preposition them in a way that is positive. I don't think in either of those, that war or this war, that was done. It was just felt in both wars, well, we could tactically beat the crap out of them, and therefore strategically we will win. Well, there's not necessarily that causation. And I think that was the problem here. But anyway, that's really not the issue. The issue is, have they over a barrel? They have us over an oil barrel, maybe. Tiger, followed by Anson.
Aha, Gary.
Hey Gary.
I think that U.S. government.
I think it's true that it looks like up to now the Iranians seems to have the upper hand in the conflict. But I think it would be misguided to attribute this to be a or to pin this defeat as a result of Trump and his decision making to a large degree. If you study the beginning of the war, honestly, nobody could have foretold what would happen after the first bombs struck the capital of Iran. Because, the observers at the time, I think this is true for us in the public, we're observing the conflict, but also true for the decision makers in Washington. There is the only uncertainty, especially to the decision makers in Washington, the only uncertainty that they had is how much effort it would require to actually knock over the Iranian government. And nobody had a clue. I remember following the conflict during the night of I believe Saturday or Sunday. And we were anxiously waiting the news of what would happen tomorrow, because prior to that weekend, there were reports of riots on the street in Tehran, and attack of the police station in Isfahan and other places in Iran. So later we knew from the American media that Trump and his cabinet, together with some foreign influence, decided it was a worthwhile bet to go for regime change in Iran. And he could have succeeded in there because, especially in the West, when information about Iran is not very easy to get access to. A lot of not only Americans, decision makers, but also people in the crowd, the Iranian immigrants, they're all saying that all Americans need to do is to decapitate some of the leadership, provide some weapons, and the Iranians would just rise up and topple their own government. That could have happened, but I think it was a bet on Trump's part. He believed some intel, we don't know what exactly he has seen. So he went in for a bet, but what happened afterwards is that the Iranians, who didn't want a foreign invasion on their country, and the IRGC, together with the government, have enough resilience to withstand the decapitation of basically, I would say, half of their important posts higher up, which is remarkable when you think about it. I think if you look at the countries nowadays, especially if it's not a Western developed country, if you eliminate half of their leadership, most countries would have fallen over. But it seems that Iran proved us wrong, and they're proven themselves to be extraordinarily resilient. So basically what happens is that they called Trump's bluff, and Trump always knew that he didn't have enough cards to play if the situation worsens, right? And a week ago, I gave the analysis that, it's basically public intel that the United States does not have enough ammunition required to fight a prolonged war over 6 months. The United States do not have enough bases in the region to support a land war if the Iranians don't just topple over like a house of cards. So, yes, you could say that Trump made a mistake, but I think that would be to ignore the fact that there's a big trend going on in the region, not only in the region, but in the world, right? In the past 20 years, we have continuously witnessed the hollowing out of American industrial base. We have witnessed the overtaking of Americans in terms of technology by rival states such as China. We have observed that half of the industrial output in the world are in an adversarial state to the Americans, and America is producing less and less of industrial share. And critically, a lot of the supply chains in America of whatever they could still produce rely on foreign components, whether they're from friendly or adversarial, supposedly, nations. So with this as the basis of analysis, we would know that Trump would also know, and all the generals in Pentagon would know, that had the situation worsened to what it is today, had the Iranians not fall over by a simple push of a few missiles, then America would be in an untenable position of trying to maintain a hegemony that they are no longer equipped or prepared to maintain. And I think this is what is happening today. This is not only on the American side, Americans being powerless to continue to wage this war, but even from the American allies. You see the more autonomous behavior of the Gulf states.
Okay, so I think you're going a little far afield from our more narrow discussion here. I'm not arguing your points, but I'm not so certain that they are directly related to the question at hand. And you said that there was no way of anticipating any of this. Would you agree that the domestic choke point right now on the President of the United States is the Strait of Hormuz? That this is what is driving his desire to get out of this and get the strait open and get the oil prices down as the midterm elections approach. Would you agree?
I wouldn't say so. I think it's more symbolic than what is actually happening, because if you look at what's happening to the oil markets after the Hormuz has been closed down, or if you assume the fact, which is the reality now, that the Iranians have control over Hormuz, and all the regional players has to play nice with Iran, including America to some extent.
Right, but they did not have control over the Strait of Hormuz. You say that's just symbolic? That would be ignoring the very point you just made, that the oil prices have risen since they've choked the strait, correct?
Yes, but it actually has not risen to the point of what we would expect, right?
But it's risen to the point where it's put pressure on the president and as the midterm elections approach, right? The American people are pressuring, and so my point is that this was predictable. He had been advised, if he read his intelligence reports, that it was likely that if you wipe out their traditional defenses, Iran's, they're going to just close the Strait of Hormuz and put economic pressure on the United States. And that's exactly what they did. So your initial argument was that this could not have been predicted, but I would counter that argument saying that it was absolutely predicted, and the president apparently ignored those predictions because they did not secure the strait before they started this this campaign, and they allowed for Iran to do exactly what the Pentagon and the CIA and the DIA told him that they would do.
Well, I wouldn't say this is an argument against that argument, because what I meant with my earlier statement is that it is entirely predictable as an outcome if the Iranians did not fall in the initial strikes, right? And I said the misjudgment of Trump is not that he doesn't understand if he cannot topple the Iranian regime, then that would actually hands them over the control, the rights of passage of that Hormuz, which, you know, according to geography, if U.S. was not such a hegemon, it's not such a superpower, the Iranians would naturally assume for themselves, right? Because that's this geography. So the only way for them not to have control over Hormuz, or actually the only way for the Americans to dictate the traffic over Hormuz, is for them to topple the Iranian regime if they decide to initiate this conflict. I mean, the world was in a delicate balance before, but as I would argue, even if Donald Trump does not provoke this conflict at the time that he did, eventually it would still mean that American influence in the region would wane because of the change of balances of power. So I don't know if Trump was desperate or something, but he made a bet, and judging where America is, if he had won the bet, you would probably extend America's influence in the region for another decade or so, and buy Americans some time to reindustrialize and actually, you know, compete again. But unfortunately, he lost that bet. So I wouldn't say is that he, I mean, you could say how much blame he has in the misjudgment, but I still think he was a bet he took, and I don't think it's that he didn't understand the consequences of losing that bet. I just think that he still had to take those bets.
So ultimately, he took the bet and he lost. So the Iranians pulled one over on the United States, or not?
The Iranians, like I said, right, if you judge, if they have enough organization, if they don't topple over, then the geography would mean that, and also the technology, right, they have, would mean that they would definitely retain control and have a say of who is to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, right? Because I believe a few months ago, I made this argument that the American power in the 90s was so strong in the region in a form that it was many generations ahead, especially in things like electronic warfare, right? They could topple the Iranian army by just using their electronics and disable all the radars on the ground. And there was nothing that the Iraqis had that could fight Americans back. But nowadays, what is really happening is that, first of all, American industrial base has eroded. They no longer produce adequate ammunition to sustain wars.
We don't have a
Their
defense
funding has
industrial
dried
base to
out.
speak of. Or at least it's so bad it's not even funny.
Yeah, and
What's
also
that? I
on
missed
the
your point,
technology
Marshall.
level, the technology
So
level.
I was agreeing with Tiger. I'm saying we don't have a defense industrial base. This article I read about the U.S. Navy presupposed that the U.S. Navy was brittle because if you knock one of our assets out, it's going to take us years to replace it. And the Chinese Navy, if there's a battle in the Eastern Pacific, they can make ships in a couple of months, and we take a couple of years, which sticks us in a place where you can't respond, and essentially the Chinese win the conflict in the Eastern Pacific. The United States Navy is not, and I'm not, they wouldn't even let me be in the military, and I think the Navy needs some help. Let's put it that way.
But if you were in the military, you wouldn't be moderating in the critical thinking forum, so you are still serving your country. Thank you, Tiger. We'll go on to Anson, followed by Amir.
He's a patriot!
Not only did Trump get played, the American nation got played. And it continues to play out, getting played day in and day out until when? 6 months ago, would it have been, if the question had been asked, you would, I think, at least in the Pentagon, you would have been laughed out of the room. Can the American Navy keep a vital sea lane open when the adversary threatens to close it with speedboats and model airplanes called drones? You've been laughed out of and look where we are today. The United States Navy cannot, all the might and all the power of the United States Navy cannot open and keep open the Straits of Hormuz. And that lifeline of trade has been essentially strangled for what, 6 months now, 5 months plus whatever it is. I would also remind you, Gary, that reopening the Straits of Hormuz was not an original objective of the war because no one thought that they would be able to close it. Remember, the Iranian Navy, about a week after the conflict started, the Iranian Navy ceased to exist. They had no navy other than speedboats and model airplanes. And yet with speedboats and model airplanes, they've been able to keep the strangulation on international trade. America has been played and will continue to get played. And I don't know what the end state is going to look like. But if we want to have a discussion, I would love to have a discussion with Tiger in this room and about the decline and fall of the American empire over the last, I'll say 30 years. I go back to at least 30 years because the fall of the Soviet Union not followed a decade later by 9/11. America has been in decline. And so absolutely, Trump has been played, the American nation has been played, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. But it's not going to be good for the American people in the end, or for the world at large.
Well, you know, if you're going to view it as you and Tiger do as indicative of an end of an empire, and how traditional means of warfare are met with untraditional means of warfare that catch the folks who are experts in traditional means of warfare, catch them by surprise. We could just look at the American Revolution. So,
well, we can also look. You're talking about traditional warfare met with unconventional warfare, and unconventional warfare won. Guess where that happened? Vietnam.
And Afghanistan with the Russians.
You betcha.
So I don't know.
And
We have to adapt to regular
Afghanistan
warfare.
with the Americans, and Afghanistan, with the Russians.
Yeah, but Petraeus and McChrystal's strategy was this huge deal in the early aughts.
Well, the other thing that I would briefly mention, but it's outside the scope of the room, there's an editorial or an article or something in the Washington Post said the United States was put off kilter by the 1930s, and in the 2030s the United States is going to be knocked flat, and then it begins to show all the curves and all the doomsday scenarios of national debt. National debt will ultimately kill us, and I don't, it's the decline of the American empire certainly has been taking place for the last 30 years. What it's going to look like when it all steadies out, maybe like Great Britain is today, I don't know. But it was a huge mistake starting this war. We've lost it. There's no way we're going to regain our footing and, quote, win the war. And now we have to deal with what's left over. And in terms of Trump's demeanor by your MAGA friend
They
here,
clipped me on Clubhouse.
that he seems to have lost his whatever, maybe, but you can be guaranteed whatever the outcome of the midterm election,
Deleted all my
you can be
Clubhouse
guaranteed
accounts.
that we will have a lame duck government for the next 2.5 years.
They deleted all my
Because the
Clubhouse
midterm
accounts, but here we
are
are,
not
standing
going to
strong,
improve
recording
government.
still.
They're only going to exacerbate
Holy
further
shit.
the status quo.
Yeah, we're not going to get into it now, but one should think about what Nancy just said about the potential collapse of the United States as the world leader, and what that would be replaced by, because we know that when there's a void, somebody fills the void. And that's the part that, is potentially scary. Potentially. Could be something.
The question is, do we speak Cantonese or do we speak Mandarin? I understand Mandarin's a little easier to learn.
Or Arabic.
No.
Well, I believe yes. You just made the comparison to England. England, there's a large Arabic-speaking population right now in England, filling a void there, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Thank you, Anson. We'll go to Amir, followed by Emma.
Goodness me, there's a lot of doom going on in this room at the moment, Gary. Well, I'm gonna sort of give you the devil's advocate version, I guess. What if Trump is playing the tactical retreat? I mean, you may ask why. I would say one of the strategies could be to disassociate the United States from Israel. Now, why would he do that?
Why would he do that?
Well, think about this in this scenario. There's actually a couple of strands to this. Trump could even agree to withdraw some of the troops, just to make a very positive gesture towards this particular tactic that I'm about to sort of elaborate on. Now that would go down pretty well, I would have thought, with the American people. I mean, if I'm mistaken, tell me. But I would have thought withdrawing troops from the Middle East, partly from, maybe one or two of the bases, that would go down well. And it may even help the midterm, I don't know. So assume Trump is negotiating with Iran, and at the same time, it's detached itself effectively from any potential attack from Israel. Now, we know that Israel defenses have been beefed up in recent months.
Could you go back and repeat that? I missed the point you're making. Who detaches themselves from any attack from Israel? I missed the point for some.
Well, I mean, if Trump is to start negotiating with Iran and he starts giving some gestures like withdrawing troops from the Middle East, he's effectively, in his negotiations with Iran, is detaching itself from Israel. It's
Okay,
detaching
so
itself
let me see if I,
militarily and tactically.
let me see if I can frame it in a different way and whether it fits with what you're saying. Because if it doesn't, I'm misunderstanding.
Mhm.
Doing so would give Israel the green light to do it what Israel thinks that it needs to do.
Israel doesn't need a green light. Israel has made.
I think
all sorts
Israel has
of noises.
been retarded in its abilities to do what it wants to do vis-a-vis Iran by President Trump, frankly.
Well, I think there was a clear pushback from Netanyahu, and I don't think that Netanyahu is going to compromise when it comes to the security of Israel. I think you've even said.
I'm
that
not
several
suggesting
times.
that. I think that a lot of people in Israel are saying Trump was our man, but he's no longer our man, so they don't care.
Well, that's different. That's a different story, isn't it? I mean, the point is that I mean, let me develop the point because I have an
Okay,
important
maybe
point
I'll
to make
understand
here.
it better if I let you go.
Yeah, I mean, so if US detaches itself militarily from Israel now, and we know that, as I said, Israel has been beefing up its defenses. It's not just the Iron Dome and David Sling. It's also the TOD, fully replenished TOD, anti-ballistic, and the laser beam, which are anti-drone equipment. They're all in position now. So, and they've also obviously diminished the threat from Hezbollah. So if you put all this together, now let's say there is a conflict between Israel, which is highly likely, because the nuclear material is still there. Excuse me. The aim to develop a bomb is still there, and there is and they're obviously pushing ahead with the development of the ballistic. So and there is no sign that they would let or release any of the proxies. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. So here's the key, I think. Should there be a conflict between Iran and Israel, Iran is no longer able to block the Strait of Hormuz and not be able to hit US bases. I mean, why would you? The excuse for attacking any of the Arab neighbors, any of the US bases in the Arab countries is removed. I mean, for goodness sake, US is now withdrawing troops. So why would you attack? So based on this scenario, I mean, if it is true, it's just a thought. Trump is not outplayed by any stretch of imagination, but it's rooting out a clever plan B, since plan A obviously failed miserably. This also, it also fits with the deterrent. Over the weekend, the Saudis, the Pakistanis, and the Turkish Prime Minister, they signed a joint defense agreement. Attack any of us, and you're attacking all of us. And that's a clear signal to Iran that do not think about attacking Saudi Arabia. So put all this together. What does it tell you? It tells you that Plan A failed. We didn't manage to topple the regime. They managed to block the Strait of Hormuz. The oil prices are going to be a massive problem. The war is not popular in the country. So what do? Let's detach ourselves from this, and let's, on the background, provide full support to Israelis and let them carry on with the job. And I think that's what I will leave it there and see what others have to say.
There is some evidence to support that possibility, and that is that recently Netanyahu outlined a timeline from which the Israelis would wean themselves from American support. And I think it's because of the frustration that the Israelis have, as much as they appreciate the U.S. support, is that there are strings attached. And I think that if the Israelis had their way, probably the decapitation campaign would not have ended when it did, because that's their method of operation, as you point out, against Hezbollah, against Hamas also. And so I think they would feel they need to feel, I think that they're getting to the point in Israel where they want to feel independent from the United States. It may not be as much a pressure on the administration from people who are so critical of the U.S. policy toward Israel as much as it may be actually coming from the Israeli side. I'm not saying that it is, but it's something to consider. Thank you, Amir. We'll go to M.
Can I just add one other thing? Sorry about that. Just add some other thing. We all know that at military layer, Israel and America, they're going to be coordinating together no matter what. It doesn't matter what is
and
said.
intelligence gathering.
And intelligence, of course. And there is one other point here, and that is inside Iran. Let's not lose the fact that it may actually not come to that at all. How would it not come to that? If Iran actually does a proper negotiated deal with America to give up on its nuclear ambition, to give up on its proxies, to stop, meddling in other people, other countries, and to basically curtail its regional ambitions. If it does that, then all good and well, and no war needs to happen. But if it doesn't, I would bet my bottom dollar that Israel is not going to let go of it. It's going to attack, and it's going to get the help disclosed from the Americans.
See, now you sound logical, and when the president says it, it sounds logical. But with the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people, the regime, it's an illogical proposition because of their fanaticism, in my opinion. M followed by Daryl.
Yes, thank you, Gary. Thank you for this conversation. It's really a national conversation, global conversation, and very, very important. You mentioned, Gary, Vietnam, and we know that based on the latest surveys, this war against Iran is more unpopular than even Vietnam towards the end of that war. The majority of Americans are against this war, which is really messy, it's miserable, it's painful for everyone. I mean, it's not for Iranian people who lost tens of thousands of people were killed or wounded. And in the name of, I wonder those say freedom. But the people who were killed in this war and wounded were also Iranian people, starting from that school, girls' school, the first day of war.
Well, let me ask you, tens of thousands of Iranians. What's your assessment of whose bullets killed the majority of those Iranians? Were they U.S. and Israeli bullets, or were they Iranian bullets?
I'm talking about the war during the last 6 months, based on the information that you can Google and right information.
But every time that the Israelis kill a civilian in Gaza, it's a big story about how it's a genocide. So where are these big stories about this genocide of the Iranian people at the hands of the Americans and the Israelis?
No, they're talking about it, Gary. Everybody is talking about the school, and it started the first day, over 200 girls with their teachers.
Yes, we know about that, and we also know that was a big screw up, that they didn't say, oh, here's a school with a bunch of Iranian schoolgirls, let's target it, right?
Well, you know that when there's Tomahawk goals and the army knows what's going on, and they have everything based on exactly.
So you're suggesting that the United States deliberately targeted a school full of girls because what would they gain by that?
Why?
Criticism such as the criticism that you are articulating right now? That's
what in U.S. military history gives you the confidence that we bombed a school on purpose?
This is something that they have to answer, and that they.
No, that's not what I asked. What I asked specifically was, noting American military history from the inception of the country to now, what American military actions make you think that we attacked a girls' school on purpose?
Can I mean, Marshall, you already talked, and please let me just.
No. I need you to answer the question. I'm a moderator. I have the right to ask. I need you to answer the question.
What is your question?
What in American military history from the 1770s to now would give you the factual belief that the Americans would purposefully bomb a school?
So you are saying that it was not purposely, it was by accident?
That's not what I said.
saying that.
What I said specifically, and I will repeat it again. Do you think what in American military history? If you don't know American military history, that's fine. You can say that. You can say you don't know. But what in American military history makes you think that we would target a girls' school on purpose?
That's a good question. That is something that the general should answer, because they can.
No. It's something you should answer, because you're the person. You're the person making the declaratory statement. You need to answer. That's how that works. You need to answer, not somebody else, but you.
Marshall, you raised a question, and please let me answer the question. I'm saying that I was watching what was going on in Congress, and the generals, they didn't say that, well, we did it by mistake. At least this is a good answer. I mean, they can come and say we did it by mistake. It's 6 months going on from that tragedies, and they are saying that we are still investigating.
No, now you are mischaracterizing the investigation. So the key findings of these are the official findings, as well as journalistic investigations found that the proximity of that school to a military infrastructure that was being run by the IRGC, an IRGC compound and naval base, which was hit multiple times, was based on outdated intelligence data. Reuters reported this a long time ago, that the U.S. military relied on flawed or outdated targeting database logs. The location was erroneously flagged as an active Iranian military facility rather than as a functioning school. It was a big fuck up by the Pentagon. It was an inexcusable fuck up by the Pentagon. And it was a terrible, terrible tragedy for which we have to collectively in the United States hang our heads in shame. It should never, ever, ever have happened. And we should grieve the loss of those children. But was it deliberate that the United States deliberately targeted a school? No. And the investigations thus far have shown the answer to that question to be no. It doesn't mitigate what happened. It happened. It was horrible. It was disgusting. When people bring it up, it causes me to become nauseous that our country did such a terrible act, but it was inadvertent. And nobody has to answer to you anything that hasn't already been answered. Now, if you want to argue that the CNN reporting about this, which was extensive, the Reuters reporting about this was extensive, and the analysis by the Pentagon is inaccurate, you can argue that the analysis is inaccurate. But to say that the generals never told Congress that it was done in error is wrong. That was a misstatement on your part, Daryl, followed by Andrew.
Hey, sorry I couldn't find the button. I wish Anson were still in the room because he said something that was so on point. And I guess to the question that you're asking, Gary, right? Were we played by Iran? And I would argue that, since after 9/11, there was this talk that, we basically avoided conflict with Iran because, it was always said, whether it was military or economic analysts, one of the first things they said was, they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. So I guess how I would flip that, if I said to you, Gary, I'm coming to your house, I'm going to do something, and you say, hey, if you do that, I'm going to like I'm going to blockade the street, right? And I come and I do it anyway, and you then blockade the street. Did you play me or did I play myself by not actually listening to what you said you were going to do? It's this idea that, that the Iranians have out-trumped Trump is something I don't understand because, again, this is just something that's been said for the past 20 years. If we do this, this is going to be the equal and opposite reaction of this action. And look at like the tentacles of this, right? We are now knee deep in a global economic crisis that I don't think anyone could have predicted. UAE left OPEC. We're now, doing swap lines for, countries that aren't getting their oil. This is the part that I think is going to have the longest impact on particularly America. The idea that, I didn't come up on stage, but last week someone said that there's no proof that China is helping Iran when there's absolute documented reporting that they're selling them shoulder-fired missiles. And there was a report in the Times, I think it was on Friday, that China is now helping Cuba with alternative energy supplies because it would appear that our next target is going to be Cuba, and China's already in there trying to help them figure out how to, put off this American attack. If the question is, did Iran play Trump? Did we play ourselves in this conflict? Because it's only playing. It seems to be only playing out exactly as people said it would play out. So then the question becomes, why didn't someone listen? To someone's comment before about this war is unpopular, the reason this war is unpopular in America is because we are losing. If we were showing that we were winning, I just think historically you'd probably see more people thinking that this is a good thing. I don't see where ignoring what I call the tentacles of this conflict into people's actual pocketbooks and onto their kitchen table is something that people are just willing to say, okay, we're just going to overlook this because we're not actually winning this conflict. And again, to Anson's point earlier, the shifting narrative did not help the messaging, and the shifting outcome did not help with messaging. And I just think the economic outcome is absolutely hurting a lot of people in this country. So I don't think the Iranians played Trump. I think basically, or outplayed Trump. I think maybe we outplayed ourselves. And I'm putting myself in that. I'm an American.
Well, the previous caller that I ripped for his misstatement about the explanation of the Tomahawk attack on that girls' school just across the fence from the military base in Iran. Set that aside. One of the things that he said is true, that the polling would show that the American support for this war is at least, in some of the polling, shows even lower support than Vietnam at the end. And you cannot prosecute a war without the support of the people. So your observations are very apropos, Daryl. Andrew, followed by Simon. Or Simone, I don't know. I think it's Simon, though. Andrew.
Good afternoon, Gary. I'm going to agree with Daryl. I don't know that I'd put the blame on the American populace as much as I would on the administration in particular.
I didn't put blame. I didn't put blame. I'm just saying.
Daryl.
I said you cannot prosecute a war without the support of the
No,
people.
I get that. I understand that. But what I was going to say is that I believe that Donald Trump believes his own press clippings, if you will, in regards to Venezuela. I think he thought this was going to be an easy kill and an easy stop, but it's turned out the other way around. There's a lot of failures here in terms of the planning that had been done previously, the war games that had been played out, that information being available, watching the world as it is in terms of the Ukraine-Russia conflict and elsewhere, where their use of this asymmetric warfare is ongoing and having great success. So I think there's a lot of different things going on at the same time. Also, you've got to consider too that Iran is not sitting in isolate. They're looking at the United States as much as you're looking at them. And I'm sure over the last 20 years or so, they've recognized the divide within the American populace in terms of, left-right divide, and could see that is playing out now in terms of prolonging this conflict with the asymmetric abilities and seeing that there is no support for this war. So I think Donald obviously made a mistake here. I don't know how they're going to get out of it. The straits were open, and that's such a small choke point. It's so easy now with this drone technology to bombard that area. Ships go through. It's not like being out on the open seas or large straits where you have to have that kind of naval force in order to repel an opposing force. It's land-based, and until and unless, I'm sure that they thought too that until and unless the United States commits to a ground invasion, that just bombing them was not going to work to any large degree. So I do believe that Donald outsmarted himself by not listening to good advice and taking only that advice which he himself wanted. And during World War II, our adversary was Adolf Hitler. And one of the things that we did on this side of the world was we studied the man psychologically, did psychological profiles. That was done in order to understand the enemy. And I'm sure that the Iranians have done the same. And look at Donald Trump since 2016, maybe perhaps before, his statements, etc., and have used that information accordingly. Thank you, Gary.
Just like they probably did a psychological study of Ronald Reagan and decided to release the hostages. This is not dissimilar to another major event in world history when an engineer at NASA presented a PowerPoint presentation which pointed out a single point of failure on the space shuttle. And he warned that the O-ring was potentially vulnerable and that a single O-ring on that multi-million-dollar spaceship carrying human beings could fail and cause the Challenger to explode. And his advice to his bosses at NASA were ignored. In fact, there's some reporting that they fell asleep during the PowerPoint presentation. Some of them dozed. They were not paying attention. And look what happened. A single point of failure. When I walk into a restaurant, or I walk into a bar, or I walk into a theater, or any other place of public accommodation, Do you know the first thing I looked for, Andrew?
Joe, tell me.
The multiple means of egress.
I was looking for
I
that.
want to know every potential exit from that building should there be something untoward occurring while I'm in it. You cannot have a single point. If you only have the front door of a bar or a restaurant is the only way in or out, and there are restaurants and bars like that, you have to recognize that you are taking a risk by going into that facility, because if that entrance is blocked during an emergency, you could be DEAD.
Yeah, and we also saw that with the Houthis and their attacks last year on the Red Sea, in that area, that particular point of egress, and that should have been contemplated as well. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, in terms of the mercurialness of Donald Trump, is that the Wall Street Journal has reported on the weekend that the administration, or some people in the administration, are saying that Donald Trump is now reconsidering the whole nuclear side of this equation. That was ostensibly the reason for the war in the first place, in that he would be able to see through to a 20-year ban within Iran on further nuclearization towards that. But we will have to see if that actually pans out. That was reported in the Wall Street Journal on the weekend.
Thank you for that, Andrew. We'll go to Simon, followed by Agent.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. Obviously, being from the UK, I'm going to give a European, or certainly definitely a UK perspective. And it has been a journey in a way. The starting point is that the UK's perspective, and I'm talking about people on, just the man on the street, not everybody, obviously, but is that there was a belief in a special relationship with America. Okay, now that may absolutely not be an American's view of the relationship with Britain, but it is, from our point of view, obviously going right back to the Second World War, and we've been shoulder to shoulder militarily, Afghanistan, Iraq, and certainly from an intelligence services perspective. So that's where we were. Then Trump arrives. Now, some of the things that he highlighted and was not happy with, for example, the amount of money that we may spend on our own defense and European spent on their defense in relation to NATO compared to what the Americans, I think they were justified. However, then it became the tariff, and I think probably it's like, well, America's imposing tariffs on us. I mean, I thought we were friends. Now that is not necessarily a very logical thought process, but his attitude. So, for example, when we decided we weren't for this first time, and there was probably, a natural inclination, okay, they're going to war, we'll go to war, but no, our leaders decided not, because they didn't believe in it, and they saw presumably all the problems that are going to come out of it, which, is clearly what's happening now. And then Trump will go and criticize us for our previous support militarily in Afghanistan. Oh, we were, in the background. We weren't on the front lines. And that became insulting. So over a process of him being Trump, and clearly didn't give a toss about the special relationship, it became clear then observing him in power as a leader of his own country, seeing the attack on Capitol Hill, seeing the way that he used executive powers that really weren't designed.
Which
for the
has
way-
what to do with Iran?
Well, no. So what? So okay. So, oh, sorry, I didn't realize it was just narrow that. So anyway, so we've learned that we're not in a relationship with you anymore, and the perspective as a consequence
Not
of that.
in a relationship, or the relationship has changed?
Well, it's not the same. It's not the same, so it's changed. And now, but that will then obviously.
We can no longer call it a special relationship. We used to when we were in keeping with Bretton Woods and that kind of multilateral vision of the world. But Donald Trump, much like Richard Nixon, is an imperial president, and they view America in an imperial fashion. And I think that is very hard for our ally across the pond to swallow, noting that Churchill essentially bequeathed it to us at the end of the war, and hoping we would carry on the same tradition. It's got to be a little upsetting as somebody from the UK to see America mismanage empire in this way.
Well, I'm not upset. What I'm just saying is we're going in a different direction. Okay? Now, is that good for you? I don't know. I mean, he's not taken seriously from our own leadership to the average man on the street.
I don't take it seriously. It's really hard.
Yeah, well, I can imagine it is hard. So really, we're just we just got to wait out until he's gone. And I don't know if you feel like that, but the reality is, in going back to now the Iran situation, well, everybody's completely confused. Everybody's completely confused as to what's going to happen, why it happened. Straits of Hormuz and the fact that Iran closed it down, that was never even mentioned at the start of the war as a possibility. But then you go, oh.
It may not have been mentioned publicly, but it was mentioned in the intelligence reports that were presented to the President of the United States, who's also the Commander-in-Chief. Agent, followed by D.
I think it's always amazing when we talk about Iran and the war going on, the military actions going on, and people almost don't even mention the word nuclear weapon anymore in this context. Unlike the fake, intel and the manufacturing of consent that happened with the Iraq war, where there was actually, despite turning over the entire country of Iraq, we really found little to no evidence of nuclear weapons. Iran has had a very active nuclear program, and then we know that they have something close to enough material, 60% enriched, certainly for plenty of dirty bombs, but certainly, enough material that was within striking distance of being capable of making 11 nuclear bombs.
Right, and to that point, Agent, in the Axios article, which the interview he had with Axios Sunday, which prompted today's discussion, and as I pointed out during the opening salvo, which you apparently missed, there is no mention of their nuclear capabilities. So what the hell is going on here? If he's not willing to even address the nuclear capabilities of Iran, has he been totally played by the mullahs?
I won't claim to, I'm not part of the daily intel briefings of the president, so I'm not going to claim to really have insight on exactly the current status of the nukes and that the mullahs possess and everything now, or the how far away they are. If they're still 2 weeks away, or is it now 3 weeks, or how many weeks away? I'm not sure.
Right, but he said like a week ago he repeated that we will not withdraw until we have secured all of the nuclear weaponry and the nuclear dust. Now he's not saying that any longer.
Well, something struck me from the last speaker, a couple things were said about not taking him seriously. I think that's always been the flaw of many people around the world, especially his critics, not taking him seriously. But at the same time, people make the other mistake of taking him literally. I don't take anything. I honestly don't pay much. You got to take everything with a large spoonful of salt whenever he says something. So it might.
Yeah, but this
he's
is the
signaling
President of the
something to
United
somebody.
States articulating the policies of the government that's engaged in a military conflict with another nation and saying that this is our goal. And now he is changing what the goal is. And so are you saying that we can't take him at his word on any of this? I mean, look, I have a personal baseline when it comes to any president. And that is, if you're going to put Americans in danger, ask them to make potentially the ultimate sacrifice, you have to be honest with the American people about what you are doing. And so, has he been dishonest with us? Then that's unconscionable if he's dishonest with us, right?
I think you can assume, given his pattern of behavior in all of his life, that he's not putting honesty as his first concern, and he may very well be very dishonest about specifics about what he's doing. I would say directionally, he's trying to do right by America and its allies at some level. I don't think he's, and I don't think he's a traitor. And I think he's balancing the risks that he sees it, and he's making the best decision that, and it could be that he took a bet, like someone else framed it as he thought he was taking a bet on something and the bet didn't work out, and now he's playing the hand that he's dealt, as the game is going along, and that's certainly I think reasonable way to frame it. I can't tell you when this thing's going to end, but a lot has to do with the leadership, or whatever you call it, in Iran. I think there's a bit of a mess now with the Strait. Clearly, a tremendous amount of good through that region that are. Some people rely on the fertilizer. There's a certain amount of food supply even that's downstream of this, and there's a food security for many people. For much of something like 20% of the world's fossil fuels at least comes through there. So adjusting that, and if this whole thing is shut down for a while, it's a big deal. At the same time, without being willing to, as you frame it in terms of American lives and everything, without being willing to go boots on the ground, or being hesitant to go boots on the ground, that seems like the only way to be willing to sacrifice tens of thousands seems like the only way that this thing's really going to be decisively secured in a lasting way. And no, I don't think we currently have the stomach for it. We might work our way up to it. We may build some kind of coalition with others, or, I think the thing now is just kind of maintaining the stalemate position and, seeing if the other side folds. I think that's a reasonable. We're only a few months into this. I know it was promised that this thing would be over in 2 weeks or whatever it was. That was delusional, if not just deliberate lie. I don't know, but I do think that Trump has hinted. I mean, let's take something he said as a possibility, which is, well, we're going to stay the course until we get everything we want. That at least is within the range of possibility that this thing could go on for years until, or at least many, many more months until there's a better, more secure position. But I think regardless, there's so much money on the line.
And now we've lost you. Sorry, Agent. David, followed by Catherine. David. Catherine? There you go. Go, David. Go.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think I mean, Trump is clearly, he's clearly in a pickle. He's 80 years old. His health is not well. I think he was banking on, a legacy here that would have gone down with Netanyahu at the start of this thing, been successful. I mean, keep in mind, for 47 years, Iran has dogged the Israeli government, not just in Israel, but other parts of the world. They've
Not just the Israeli government, but our government.
our government. And so the optimism here to finally dispatch this regime. I mean, recall now I paid 7 visits to the White House as a run-up to this. He finally said, hey, we got our guy in the White House. We got the most powerful military in our corner. The Iranian regime is weak. The people want regime change. I mean, there's a whole litany of positivity going in to the decapitation of this regime. And I heard one of the elements of this was one of the elements of this campaign was challenged by Erdogan, which didn't want to see the Kurds brought in to a ground invasion as potentially causing problems on his front. So, and now we're seeing this pact created by the wealthiest Arab state in the region, Saudi Arabia, the nuclear power in Pakistan, and the biggest military in the region, one of NATO's biggest militaries in Turkey. And, this is a check on the ability of the United States to defend the region and the massive oil interests and to their economy and our economy. That they've run out of trust, they've run out of confidence, our ability to keep Iran from firing upon them. And so what does that do for Israel in the region as the hegemon? It weakens their hegemonic stability there further. But I also heard that it was a play against the Houthis and Iran's proxy wars as they continue to destabilize the shipping and the maritime routes of the oil tankers.
So do you consider all of this an indication that he's been played, or that he is the play?
He got in over his skis. He had too much confidence. I mean, he had the wrong guy in the chair, Gary. He had the wrong guy in the chair. Defensive head staff was not. He was in over his skis. He did not have the acumen or the ability to wage this war. He ignored his Joint Chiefs of Staff with regard to the Hormuz question, and that's clearly blown up in his face. And now what's really probably bothering him and worrying him the most, Gary, is if these oil prices continue to inflate and rain down. I mean, we just saw the massive hemorrhaging of job losses. We're seeing his policies, his economic policies, play out in real time on the domestic front. And if the washout, irrespective of the democratic socialist positions that we've talked about, irrespective of those folks that have been winning, and whether or not middle America is worried that this country is going communist or socialist, he could lose both House and the Senate, and then be bogged down in investigation after investigation, not to mention the inability to get the funding for this war or for this campaign even further. And his lame duck president status is assured, not to mention another impeachment possibility. So there's massive implications here. And I think, what started out as great intentions has turned in, they say, Gary, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And, I know whether or not you believe in a hell or not, but we're facing a hell here. We're facing a hell based on good intentions. completely blown up in our face. And the best path forward is to somehow broker and continue to create the stalemate sort of arrangement. And he may just have to cut some checks to get these straits open again. Otherwise, the costs are going to be far more formidable down the road.
I think that I just looked this up. I think there were only 3 generals who have ascended to the Secretary of Defense. And in each case, I think there had to be a special dispensation by Congress for them to become, because they hadn't been retired long enough to go into such a position. And the 3 were, very notably, George
C. Marshall,
James
Mattis,
Mhm.
and no, I was gonna say Eisenhower, but not Eisenhower.
No, it was
No,
Biden.
Lloyd
It was
Austin.
Biden's the guy, right?
Lloyd Austin. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. I would suggest that a George Marshall, a James Mattis, and a Lloyd Austin as Secretary of Defense, advising the President of the United States that he probably would go his own way regardless. I think. Maybe not. What do you think, David? But you made the point, David, that Hegseth is way over his head. But if you took somebody with the credentials of a Marshall, a Mattis, or an Austin, do you think things would be any different, or do you think the president would just go on his merry way as he is right now?
I think he got too many yes folks around him that cheerleaded him into this and didn't put.
That may be, but I'm just asking if you had a strong, a person with the strong military backing of a Marshall, a Mattis, or an Austin. Do you think that would have changed anything, or do you think he would be listening to those folks?
Well, if you recall the first administration, they called it the adults in the room were surrounding him in a way that was shielding his impulses from being played out in real time. So I think he respects the military. He respects those generals. I think he believes in his own mind that he's one of those guys, that he's done enough for the country to deserve the hardware that those guys wear. And I think a Patton, an Eisenhower, somebody of that ilk, even a Schwarzkopf, he was a big voice in the first Gulf War. And I mean, I think those guys could say, look, Mr. President, if you go into Iran, I'm resigning. We are not going to win this, and we're going to be bogged down in Iran. Our weapons, our missiles are low capability. We don't have the appetite for troops on the ground.
And you think he would listen to them? Because I'm certain that this is the kind of thing that he was told in his intelligence briefings. The Pentagon certainly knew how much munitions they had in hand going into this war.
What I also question, Gary, is this, as critical as Israel's right to exist is in this world today, with all that's going on, and the amount of defense and intelligence that they procure on a daily basis, where were those smart guys in the room warning Netanyahu that America can't help us pull this off? At least not.
I have a theory.
Right
I have
now.
a theory about that, but it's not for today. But I have a strong theory about what happened there.
Okay.
Happy to discuss it with you sometime, but I don't want to take us off topic. But I have a strong theory, and the problem there was not in Jerusalem. The problem there was in Washington, in my opinion. But and I bet you the U.S. ambassador to Israel would be in agreement with my assessment. Thank you, David. We'll go to Catherine, followed by Iman.
Thank you for all this discussion and meaningful questions raised, because I hadn't thought through piece by piece. And one question earlier, I thought, is there any typical war protocol, say before you bomb this, send a drone over, take a picture, like do some surveillance? That would be my question in the congressional hearings. Like what is
You're talking about what
Surveillance is usually done before bombing.
Are you talking
like some kind of surveillance is usually done?
Are you talking specifically about the girls' school?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think that
It's one thing to
happened.
say they had some old, maps, but
Right.
we've also heard specific people get targeted in their homes and their family. So it doesn't quite hold water. And when I've thought of the George Floyd things, I said, well, what is the police protocol? What is supposed to
Right,
happen?
right. It's a fair question. Just remember that those targeted attacks that occurred in Iran were made by the Israelis. This attack, the Tomahawk attack that hit the wrong, and by the way, the Israelis can make a mistake too. I'm not saying that they couldn't, but I'm just saying in the instances that you refer, you try to reconcile those precise, very precision drone attacks that took out the apartments of the Iranian leadership and left everybody else unscathed. That was an Israeli operation. The Tomahawk attack on the school, that was a U.S. operation. And they obviously didn't know that they had made a mistake because they came back and did it again. They hit them more than one time. So they really thought that they were hitting a legitimate military target, and they screwed up. That's all there can be said about it. And it's horrible and inexcusable.
Yeah.
But that's what it was, a screw up.
Yeah, and I had to meet just, reverence of people losing their lives in this way. At one point, there was an artist putting up pictures of, unfortunately, people who were in a shelter being told this is where you need to go, a bunker, be safe in there, but they bombed the bunker. And so
Who bombed what? Where are you
this was
referring to?
I think it could have been the Iraq War. I'm not sure which, but
Okay, but we're talking about Iran right now. But
I know, but it's not the first time I've heard of this. Like somebody's being told go here, or was it a complete mistake? I mean, even
okay. So during the Iraq War, the United States got bad intel that they should not have accepted. That some enemies of the United States were meeting for some high-level confab at a remote location in a big house. And the United States bombed that place, and it was somebody's wedding.
Oh, no, yeah.
Okay, the United States didn't say, let's go kill all these people going to the wedding. They operated on faulty information that was provided to them by one of their partners, and the reason was their partner was the head of some little militia, and the guy whose daughter was getting married was the head of an opposing militia. So he fed the United States disinformation in order to take out his rival on the ground. And the United States did his bidding for him, but it wasn't like the United States said, let's hit this because we're going to get criticized for killing all these people at a wedding, but so what? Let's invite the criticism. In the fog of war, mistakes are made. I'm not excusing them,
right?
But I'm explaining that all of the investigations, both by the Pentagon and independent investigations by journalists, have reached the conclusion that this was a terrible, terrible, terrible mistake. It was a screw up. That's all it was.
Yeah. Well, and I want to, honor, just take a minute and remember the lives lost and the people. They are heroes.
I agree. That is death. That is death. I agree.
But waking up our souls, I actually believe in a bit of an after. But just for the record, because people don't hear about it enough, that there was another mistake made where, and the truth is, I'm not sure which conflict. It could have not been the U.S. per se. If I were more on the ball like I am now, 15 years ago when I heard about it, but this artist had taken photographs of the children who were against the wall in terror, and they were all incinerated. It's a terrible, terrible thing to think about. But people said people won't believe us if there's no evidence. Take pictures, tell people. So I saw her when she was hanging up the exhibit.
Yes, of course, it happens all the time. We're going to move on, but I just want to point out that when we look at this, and we should look at it, and I'm not saying we should not look at it, let's not forget that tens of thousands of people civilians, children, women, old people have been killed by the Iranian regime, by their own government, for the simple crime of protesting. Of course, we should not ignore what happened to those school children. It's terrible, it's horrible, it should not have occurred. It's disgusting. But let's not forget, when we talk about that screw up, the deliberate killing of civilians, the extrajudicial killing of people, left, right, and center that continues today at the hands of this regime in Tehran. Are we just going to choose which victims we mourn based on who was responsible for their deaths? Or are we going to pray for the souls of the others, the tens of thousands who are being killed by the Iranian regime? There is hell to be paid within the U.S. military for that mistake, and the U.S. intelligence community for that mistake. I don't know what hell, but I'm sure somebody's careers at the very least have been derailed because of some decision that was made that resulted in that attack on that school. And there's congressional hearings about what happened at that school. Are there parliamentary hearings in Iran about the tens of thousands of people who are being killed? Why are we killing our own people? Do we see that? No. So while we flail ourselves for our screw up, which we absolutely should flail ourselves for our screw up, let's not lose sight of what's happening in Iran. You can say that's none of our business. That's an argument to be made. But there's another argument to be made that we are all God's children and we should be concerned about each other. We should not just be concerned about who we kill or who Israel kills. How about the people that the regime in Burma/Myanmar kills, their own people? Just because of their ethnicity, they kill them. They're not even out protesting like these people are in Iran. You could say, if they weren't out there protesting, they would have been killed. All right, the people are protesting, but they're being killed because the military junta doesn't like that ethnic group. We don't pray for the souls of those people. We don't even recognize what's happening to those people. Let's be consistent. Iman followed by Martin.
Hi, Gary. Thank you for such a nice conversation and discussion. I really enjoyed that. One thing I noticed that I think we shouldn't forget about the big picture. I don't think the situation about Iran is about the midterm election or about Trump as the president. It's about the long-term relationship and U.S. benefits. We have a government in Iran that is looking for hostility against U.S. We have a government in Iran that is doing anything possible in their hands to destroy America. I know this because I'm an Iranian American. I was born and raised in Iran. So I'm talking about government in Iran that their goal is not the pursuit of happiness or growth or economy growth or a good life for its citizen, but its goal is that to destroy America and Israel. And this is, you could have heard that from all this America slogans in the past 40 years. And I'm telling you, this is not just empty words. This is what they have been acting on, and you can look at what they have been doing, all these resistance groups that they have been building around Israel in the region. And just simply look at what they've been asking the United States to open the Strait of Hormuz. They're saying that the United States has to abandon all the bases in the countries in the region. So I think this confrontation, this military confrontation between the United States and Iran was inevitable. no matter how long you could have ignored this, you know, you could have presidents that come in and leaving and say, okay, we're just going to deal with Iran and let them to do whatever they want. But the more stronger they become, the more difficult it becomes for the United States to deal with that. And I think October 7th was just a glimpse of that. Which, you know, you leave a country, you give them with money in their hands, and you just leave them alone. And over time, all of a sudden, you deal with a monster that is almost impossible to deal with. So I think dealing with Iran was inevitable. That's something needed to be happening. Maybe not President Trump getting involved like maybe other presidents, but at some point we had to do that. But the problem is, now we have to deal with Iran. How would you deal with it? Look at what happened in the region. You know, you have Iraq, you have Afghanistan, you have Libya, you have Syria. The ultimate goal, not to forget about, is not to simply overthrow the government in Iran. And the goal is not also to make an ally out of the Iranian government. The goal is that to make a neutral government in Iran. And why I'm saying that? Look at what happened in Afghanistan. We were okay to hand over Afghanistan back to Taliban as long as they are not attacking us again. We're okay to have the militia groups in Iraq as long as the Iraqi government is not seeking, you know, hostility against U.S. government. We're okay with having like a dictator in Syria as long as the Syrian government is okay to live peacefully with Israel. So I think the ultimate goal in Iran was the same. The ultimate goal in Iran for any president to come to power in the United States is not to make an ally out of Iran, is not to overthrow the government in Iran. Rather, is to have a government in Iran that is willing to live with U.S. and Israel without attacking. It's not like you want to make Iran is not a country that you can leave it to become like North Korea. If Iran, if it is becoming North Korea at some point, they might attack to us. Now, the question is, if this is the ultimate goal, how would you do it? Obviously, we have learned our lessons that we don't want to do what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan. If the ultimate goal is that to hand over the country back to the Taliban, to the original, governors, why would you spend like 20 years and so many troops in it? You want to do that, you have to think about it from the first place. So I think what happened was that President Trump got involved with a couple of things in that. So maybe he had a bet that maybe Syria's route might be possible, or Venezuela might be possible. But, you know, it was soon very clear that it's not going to work. Even Syria's route model happened after 10 years of after Arab Spring that happened in 2013. And the change was happening like in 2025, like 12 years later, with what all we have done in the past 10 years. Even attacking people.
Hey, Liliana. Hey.
Okay, so basically I just have to do clinical praise, that's why. But honestly, I'm gonna be no shop because I'll be late if I do shop. And I do have work in the morning tomorrow. But I do want to tell you that I want you to put effort into this.
Of course, my darling, I am.
Will you? You gonna prove it to me?
I'm proving it to you every moment, my darling.
Okay, well I want you to come here.
You want me to come to your house?
Come here, yeah.
Okay. Let me hop
Not
in
on
this.
the inside though, but I need you to drop something off.
Oh, you just want me to drop something off and then leave?
No, we can do something real quick, but I can't go there. I need to come here.
Why?
That's fine.
Why?
So, I really need to take the claim me today, remember?
You don't need to take it, my love. You can, you should consider not taking it because a certain percentage of people have adverse reaction to it. And I really don't think you need to take it.
Anyways, I need you to come here and, drop off and take it, okay?
Okay, darling.
Okay. Just bring it here. And just maybe. You need to like go to like, I don't know, supply store or something. We'll need some office supply.
Okay. Sounds fun. Okay, I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
I'm an international known talent. I deserve more than that.
I don't think so. I'm just gonna stay home. Fuck, I should never have bought it.
But the girl was going through some shit, whatever. Ends up her mom supporting everything she wants to do. The school, because the girl's going to the counselor and, you know, she's having issues, they're involved with her emotional situation. So mom is like trying to do everything right. Okay. By the end of high school, the girl was on the hormones, right? She's a boy now, all the shit. Okay. Our kids are now grown with kids. Most of them have children and everything. So, you know, they're in early 20s now. The girl now has decided that she's done, like she knows she went through some shit. Her life was crazy. And she's now suing her mom for putting her on those pills as a kid. The whole town know they got her mom out here looking crazy. Now her mom is like sickly. You see the lady, she looks like life has beat her ass up. And truthfully, people that are beating her up, it's not fair because the pressure from the community, the people that watch this shit, the Democratic people that are really tripping off, they pressured, it was like a mindset for them. I sat up here and watched these grown people. So to see it all reverse on her and her daughter to grow up and be like, what in the fuck did you do to me? Why did you allow that to happen to me? I was going through something. You should have locked me in my fucking room. That's what the girl told her. You should have locked me in my room. Like her mom's like, yeah, I would have went to prison. Well, yeah, and guess what? The ACLA, some government program, it provided this girl a damn lawyer to sue her mama. And who knows what's going to happen with the case, but it's happening right now. It's very crazy. There's more kids that's like that. The shit's a fad, like most things that kids do. And then cut your fucking kid's leg off and give him an eye patch, wants to be a pirate. Like, you have to, this whole shit is crazy. And yes, there are neighborhoods, affluent neighborhoods especially, where people are giving their kids what they can to appease them for the amount of work that they got to goddamn do to pay their mortgage, right? That are dealing with this shit. So no, Rob, it's not just everybody has the same shit. Of course, there's other kids that I know that obviously have none of this going on. It's not everywhere. But in particular areas, it's rampant. And people have the right to vote for their jurisdiction.
Well, my
so
advice would be any parent, if you concerned about that type of stuff, because I was concerned about the type of stuff my son specifically, when we were enrolling him in school, would be exposed to. Thankfully, in HISD, as much flack as they give Houston Independent School District, it does have a school choice program that says if you can get your child to another school, and especially if they can pass the testing and all that, they can go to any school you can get them to. Thankfully, my son excelled. He passed all of the tests, so we found a school that was better for him, that was still in the program. I mean, still in the HISD area. Here's my point. And I ain't like no rich parent. My son's mom ain't no super rich woman. Like, we just concerned parents. If I was concerned about my kids being indoctrinated with MAGA stuff, I wouldn't put my kids in a school that's rooted around a bunch of MAGA people. So take that in the saying that I'm concerned with liberal indoctrination. I wouldn't put my kids in a situation to where they can be easily indoctrinated. That's just my thought process on it. Furthermore,
Rob, you don't want people around like me. You don't want your loved one around people like me. Hell no. Come on, man.
I hear you, Mom.
Come on,
I
Rob.
will say, Rob, you hit a strong point, but then there is liberal policy
that trumps your point. And this is what I mean. I'm in a state where you almost elected my current governor as the vice president, right? So all of the Democrats in the room, hear me clear. You almost made this a federal policy.
Come on.
Because this man started it. And I don't want nobody to come off their mute without hearing the full context before you talk. Now, the law doesn't explicitly say we're going to transition your kids. What the law says, and I want you to understand what's possible, because I'm going to explain possibility and actually happening after the law. Our governor, Governor Tim Walz, enacted an executive order that then became a bill and became a law in the state of Minnesota, completely liberal state of Minnesota. The law says that we will support the gender affirming care of any child above 7, regardless of their parents' opposition. Matter of fact, they made it a crime to oppose your child's gender identity crisis, right? It's a crime to call it a crisis here. What happens here is if your child above 7 and above can make it to an emergency locale, that's a hospital, that's the
Some school location,
station, schools, anywhere where there's a mandated reporter. They can tell the mandated reporter that you are not affirming their gender identity. Minnesota will begin the process to unparent, remove you as the sitting parent, and enact the state as the parent of the child and begin gender affirming care. This, please don't interrupt because it gets worse. Not only can we do that for kids in Minnesota, but kids in Texas who can make it up 35 to my state, we will stop your state from coming to get your child. This is a law. I don't want you to argue with me until you've actually read the law. You all made this psycho. You all were trying to make that psycho the fucking vice president. And I don't want to hear.
We want Sharia, Mike. We want Sharia there.
I was born here. Hold on.
We want Sharia law, Mike.
Hold fast. I don't even know why you're interrupting.
Bro, see, I'm an out. We want Sharia law there.
If
We
you
want
are a
Sharia.
conservative, I don't know why you're interrupting me, because as a conservative, you should be amening. Yes, sister girl, let's shut it down till the end. I shouldn't get any pushback from a conservative, not today on this topic, when it is literally a fact. Moreover, I am disgusted by the motherfucking tampons and the
Motherfucking, we want the Sharia law, Mike. We want Sharia law there.
and real quick, for the record, nobody knew the fuck that school was doing this shit until your kids are actually there. Who the fuck would consciously be like, oh, let me go sign my kid up for this bullshit? So whoever put that in the chat is fucking ridiculous.
Wait. You cannot remove. This is the whole state. And for all of you that say, well, you moved to the state, I am a 5-generation Minnesotan. I am a historic community descendant. I am not just getting here yesterday. These people did this shit and we protested. These people did this shit and we were screaming and hollering, help. It is so bad up here with our children, which is why I enrolled my kids in the HSISD. What? Sukla, what? From Minnesota? Yes. I enrolled my kids in the Houston Independent School District via their digital platform because I refuse to let my children go to school in this sick ass.
We want Islamic school, bro. We want Islamic school. Fuck all the schools. We want Islamic school, Mike.
Let me
Sharia school. Oh, fuck,
somebody get Matthew, please. Somebody get Matthew. No, but for real, all bullshit aside, I did enroll my children in HISD's digital education program where they were homeschooled via the digital education program of the Houston Public Schools. I appreciate the ability to be able to do that with school choice. So I'm not knocking what Rob says, because Rob's actual instance worked for me to get my kids out of this demonic ass system where they put your children in a cage if they ask to be. If your kid tells them they think they're a rabbit, they will feed your baby rabbit food, put them in a cage, and let them run around. Your baby can tell them up here that they are a gerbil, and they will give their ass a hamster wheel. Your baby can say that they are a kitten, and they'll get them a fucking litter box.
But I want to circumcise our children, mate. I want to circumcise our children. Believe.
I need you to stop. I need you to stop. Because you're interrupting a good informational session and you look like a Democrat shield. Fuck out my way. We gotta stop these sick, demonic motherfuckers from touching our kids. In the mind and on the body, they gotta go. And y'all think it's a game, but I promise you this, you don't want American Minnesotan politics to rule the USA. You do not want Tim Walz. You do not want him. But y'all was so Kamala, you didn't realize what came with her.
Kamala ass was doing the same shit. This bitch came from California where the same shit was going on. And not to mention, this bitch was keeping prisoners in jail 6 to 8 months over their sentence. And motherfucker would get a release date of February, and everybody knew it was common knowledge they'd get out sometime around fucking August.
That's good, right?
Yeah, no. Are you fucking kidding me? If these people, these are kids. No. These are people's families.
No, I'm talking about.
These are people who actually were, that had 2 3 years and then they're doing 3 to 4 fucking working freezers. And then coming out and couldn't even get on the street and get into a goddamn firehouse to get a goddamn job. To continue being, we get fire certifications in California Youth Authority. These were children who had first-time offenses, a lot of them drugs, marijuana, shit like this. They couldn't even get out of jail. She was putting parents in truancy who their kids were in the hospital beds with sickle cell and were going on the job and arresting the parents. The bitch was brutal. Meanwhile, she's sleeping with the governor. She ruined the governor's fucking marriage with his wife after 25 years. She was hoeing around with Montel Jordan. Everybody's seen the fucking pictures.
Okay, when it comes to
this is ridiculous. To act as if her and the exact same things that were going on in California, which is why I fucking left California, to Tim Walz and the shit that was going on in Minnesota, and you thought that we were supposed to leave our children and grandchildren to this kind of fucking legislation. You all thought that that was a smart thing to do.
When it comes
with our borders wide the fuck open, her coming from the administration that left our borders wide open, our social services are completely evaporated. All of our costs for our hotels and food have went out the goddamn window.
When it comes to
this was not an option. It wasn't an option at the time. Not for anyone that has kids. Maybe for you guys who are out here maybe adopting because you got a mate or a partner or whatever and all this shit works out for you, fine. And no one cares. But for those who are out here still trying to raise traditional families and make sure that they have baseball and soccer and fucking after school activities and can grow up and go to school, a trade school, get trade back in schools so kids can actually get jobs without having to go to a 5-year fucking overpriced education school. Yeah, those of us who are out here actually just trying to live real life, one day fucking year, take care of our kids, make sure that everybody is straight, life and health insurance, couple cars in the front, 4 or 5 bedrooms, a pool in the back, regular shit.
When it comes
those who are okay being a little condo with your boyfriend, I bet all that shit worked out great for you.
When we identify the source of the trans agenda, okay, has anyone found the source of this agenda, where it started? Because it seems that, it seems that white people are overrepresented when it comes to trans people. They're 66% of all trans, right? So this seems to be affecting their households at an alarming rate, where the kids don't want to be themselves anymore, all right? So what's going on in these white families, okay, to where they're overrepresented per capita, 66%, I think they're like 54%, 55% of the population. What's going on in these white families to where the kids don't want to be themselves? What's plaguing them and what's the source of it?
Well, I think the source, the modern day source, this is just my perspective, of course. Somebody white can chime in, correct me after I offer my submission, but it seems to me right around the time that politics decided to brainwash the youth that it was no longer cool to be white. I kept hearing this narrative across social media in recent years that white people are ashamed to be white, and this ideology was on an uptick through political propaganda and pop culture and the debates around critical race theory. All of it kind of led to this dialogue slash brainwashing of the youth that whiteness is undesirable, right? And so, from my perspective, right around that time, it seems that this push of transness was pushed on. I mean, I won't say it was just pushed on white kids, but I think the reason why you see it highly represented in whites is because, well, for those who think it's no longer cool to be white, that it's shameful, it's embarrassing because of history and racism and et cetera, et cetera. How can white people be oppressed, right? How can white people position themselves as a new oppressed class or a marginalized class? They certainly can't do it through race because nobody's going to buy it, considering the historical context around so-called whiteness and white history. Sex and gender is the only other option. So now you see, anytime we have this trans conversation, it always centers on white males. White males who identify as women. Hardly ever do you hear about trans men. Isn't that odd? I'd also like to offer this submission, and I'll land here. I've stated this before. This is a hill I will die on. Othello, to your numbers. If it were black men that were leading those numbers in the trans, if it was 70% of trans people were black males identifying as women, this would not be a debate because white folks would not want black men with their big dicks and their wigs sharing spaces with their precious white daughters in sports, in the locker rooms, in the spas, in the gyms, in the prisons. Ain't no way it would happen, okay? This is a white contagion, and it needs to be a case study.
Damn, so you can't send your kid to the school or
No,
the Catholic church?
Yeah, all the time, you're assuming that all black men have I'm just saying, because some of them, they don't want them in there anyway. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page because they don't want them in there, period. It doesn't matter who they are. At the end of the day, what you just said is true. If this is the challenge that we have, because so many people today do not understand the debauchery of wanting our children to be cut, mutilated. I mean, guys, I'm in death care. You haven't seen someone who's quote unquote gone through the surgery and take one that we have brought into our care. Guys, it is something that I don't know why any doctor would ever tell me that they were here to preserve a life. It is absolutely horrible what we're doing to the human being. And I'm sorry that people think, oh, it's because, Johnny thinks that he's a girl. Johnny is not a girl, okay? It's called dysphoria. We need to do this, guys, and tell people the truth. Oh, I'm sorry, we're in the Trump talk. I mean, Donald Trump is one of the people that said, we can't cut off people's penises. We can't cut off our kids. Stop. Hey, guys, whether you like Donald Trump or not, let's all at least give the man credit that he doesn't want people cutting off people's penises. Come on. I mean, he don't want people cutting off young women's breasts. When are we going to say at least the man has enough common sense that whether you like him or not, and most of them don't like him because he's just straight up. And like before, people said, well, he said grab him by the pee. At least he's normal. What are you going to grab him by? He's not saying grab by the wee-wee. He's going to grab by the pee-pee. Just saying. But this guy, thank you so much for the transparency because this 1% out here is destroying the conversation that we all have. So I salute you, Mike.
Actually,
Just a minute.
it actually kicked off with Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner or whatever, Bruce Jenner or whatever, because like all of a sudden it was at the heightened the Windsor ruling from the Supreme Court on marriage, and then Obama solidified gay marriage. So it was around that perfect setup when Caitlyn Jenner came out and then was given accolades, and all the poor men had to go through all this stuff, and there was a lot of empathy and sympathy that was given around, and a lot of like weird things, and it took a Kardashian. And I mean, like, to be fair, the Kardashian clan and the Jenners have had impact on us. Like, GLP-1s only became popular because of a Kardashian literally injecting it in her ass. And then every single suburban woman across America said, sign me up for GLP-1s, and demanded them in massive ways, to the point where we're sitting back going, hold on, there are some negative side effects to this. Not all of you should be taking this. And but it was really, that would be Bruce Jenner's transition would be the catalyst that sparked this, and then, you know, being held and given the ESPN award for bravery and all that other shit that came out, and then people targeting that, and then you had a whole lot of people that were there. And prior to that, if you remember, there was a brief pause after gay rights, like before Obama. Like, people didn't really care if you were cross-dresser. In fact, like Robin Williams did a whole movie about the birdcage, and it was like one of the top box-selling fucking office ones that existed, and it was funny as fuck. And I mean, shit, everybody remembers this stupid movie. But I mean, and there were a number of them. Patrick Swayze did what was that movie? Tu Wong Fu something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like there was a whole like genre that kind of popped out that really pushed that envelope of acceptance and rights. And then then it went to like, okay, so now LGBT got rights, and you know, everything's kind of calm for a second. What is the next oppressed thing that we can reach for? And it just went to transgender, and then they became it. And if you talk to gay rights activists from like the 80s, the 70s, and on, they've walked away from the movement. They've literally said, all right, this is completely retarded, this has gone off the rails, and this is not what we advocated for in any shape or fashion, like well-known ones. And they no longer like sit there and support it. They, in fact, they'll tell you, I'm voting conservative because, quite frankly, I can't align with this unit, and I can't align with a party that agrees with it. And you see that, like, gay men know where their money's at. They're like, I want tax breaks. They vote Republican. Like, it's just a known thing.
It's very true. And Obama actually was the one that brought in gay marriage, and also opened up a huge taxation opportunity for the United States. So that was the win that they were looking for, was to be acknowledged and be able to, you know, not have to live in the shadows, have health care, right, through your job and that kind of thing. So I would just admit that we could go back a couple hundred years, that every post-matriarchal society that became patriarchal, you've always seen even in, you know, rulership, there'll be and who were now women or rumored to be women, right, that ruled these particular places. These, I don't know if you would call it, these sexual proclivities have never really changed. It has normally just been whatever the man wanted in the bedroom, right? Women's rights changed a lot of that. Women had an opportunity to have a say on how they were treated, but, you know, before 1960, women weren't even able to talk about what their husbands were doing, or who they were sleeping with, or what they were dressing up at, whatever it was. So after that time period, just like Viking was just talking about, you know, we went through a period of there being gay clubs, you know, gay places, gay sides of town, right? You know, areas where people went for specific things. Nowadays, every club is intermixed. Everything is whatever it is. So there's been a huge
I don't know what
social...
clubs you going to, baby, but hey,
You're saying that there's no one gay at any
No,
club
I'm not
in
saying
America? Is that what you're saying?
to suggest
Are
that there
you
wouldn't
okay?
be to suggest there wouldn't be one gay person somewhere is kind of stupid. What I'm
So what are you
saying is
saying?
what I'm saying is there aren't these big mixed clubs of straight people hanging around and partying with a bunch of gay people. Like,
Are you serious?
Clearly,
You
you've never
believe
been
that
to
in
West
2026? Yeah, he ain't been
nigga, y'all,
outside.
that's what I'm saying. When y'all
He's
talking
in,
about some
yeah.
real California,
Yeah, you
nigga,
haven't
I
been
guarantee you I'm way more outside than y'all.
You don't hang
I
out in
get-
Montrose?
I guarantee you that. No, I don't hang out in I used to work over,
Yeah. Oh.
you feel me? And that's how I would know that, like, they still have their own area.
You got it.
Largely confined to their own areas. Y'all are
The
making
gays are
issues up.
confined. This is discrimination. The gays need to sue.
Where are the gays
Sue
confined?
to be free.
Somebody show me.
No, they don't just in every city they have gay areas.
Yeah, but just
So
to be
they're not confined to
And when I say confined, I don't mean locked up and held. I'm saying they party in their areas.
Okay.
Yeah, in 1984, when they used to go to the Blue Oyster, niggas now they're where? What the fuck are you talking about? This is crazy.
Club without seeing 5 gay people. For instance, we always had Loring Park. We've always had gay 90s. You can look up these 2 things in Minnesota. Loring Park, gay 90s. When you get to those 2 places, it's rainbows and motherfucking superstars, okay? Whatever the fuck. They are all rainbows and superstars. If you go there, we automatically assume that you're either friendly towards them, like you cool, you know somebody who in the life, or you in the life yourself, right? No questions asked. However, prior to this Obama thing, you wasn't catching them over at Rick's at all. You weren't gonna find them over at the Caboose.
They must run get their ass whooped if somebody rub up on the wrong person drunk. It did not happen. Sorry.
It did, right. Today, baby, they right there in the heart of the city. We built this city on rock and roll with everybody else with their titties out telling you they a man.
And you wouldn't even know the difference, half of them, if you wasn't in their damn face. So how would you know?
Yeah, we got to remember when the gays start taking to the streets saying, we're here, we're queer, get used to us, it was a wrap. Yeah, they're no longer confined to their little pockets because they had to be.
Yeah, this ain't police academy, okay?
Yeah, the straights, listen, for decades, the straights have historically gone to the gay clubs because it's always been known that they had better music, better vibes, better. Also, this whole like straights and the gays aren't mixing at clubs. I don't know where y'all got this, but clearly we don't know a lot of gays or straights that hang with gays.
I'll be fair with you. I don't like hang out with a lot of gays. I know gay people. I hang out where our party at is in areas amongst people. It ain't even about them being straight. It's just we not doing certain things. You feel me? Like I'm in Houston. This is a big population for the LGBT community.
Somebody gay up
You
there.
see them every day. Like ain't nobody tripping about them. That's what I'm saying. Like how is this such a big topic issue? We talking about transgenders. Like this shit ain't even like it's such a small percentage of the population.
Rob,
It's some fear mongering shit.
No, Rob, and listen, that's the thing about it. I think most people agree with you on that point. And the trans issue was never an issue for anybody. Still, for some odd reason, your politicians decided to make that an issue and make it a talking point. Your average American wasn't talking about this stuff.
And you don't think that it was right wingers from North Carolina that made that a national issue?
Rob, one last point. I'm gonna shut up. It's only a national point right now because the liberals decided that the children needed to be targeted. The liberals said the children are suffering from gender dysmorphia, and that is heard of. Children don't know what gender dysmorphia is, transgenderism is. Your average child is not waking up one morning talking about, I'm born in the wrong body. These are ideas instilled in them by the pedophiles and groomers that are either their parents and or educators.
What the fuck is this bitch talking about?
was, okay, you want